Okay, looking at the Chargers schedule, I think having KC in week 1 is nice. Obviously, they already kind of know how they play. I think if the field in Brazil is slippery, that should favor the Chiefs because if you remember the Super Bowl before last when they played the 49ers, not the last time they played the Niners, but the time before that, the field was considered slippery. That was the field that they imported into the stadium, and so everyone was slipping everywhere, and it kind of favored the Chiefs because they hold, and it kind of negated the pass rush a lot in that game and made the Niners pass rush somewhat ineffective. So I think a similar situation could be the case for the Chargers in Brazil. Probably also want to make sure that they have the longer set of cleats available if the field is slippery, if it's grass. The players lost their footing during the game and later attributed it to the slick surface at Arena Corinthians, which is normally a soccer stadium for the Eagles. It stirred some not so great recent memories. It kind of reminded me of the Super Bowl turf, said tight end Dallas Goedert, referencing the surface and Eagles lost to the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl. Is that 37? I mean, y'all saw it there that it was kind of rough to get traction. Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts said after the series, he went to the sideline and told his teammates they needed to switch to longer 7-stud cleats. Change worked out pretty well for the Barkley. Went on a rush for over 100 yards and finished with 3 total touchdowns. They're just one of those fields where the top came off pretty easy. Offensive tackle Lane Johnson said that's why they make studs that's why we pack them. They're not comfortable, but they're handy. I ran at full speed when we did a walkthrough Thursday, slipped, and I said, I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. I'm going to 7 studs, Goedert said. Not everyone was diplomatic. Los Angeles Lakers star LeBron James took to social media and wrote, "Man, this field sucks." This is an article written by Tim McManus, September 7th, 2024 by ESPN. So yeah, that's an important game, I think, for the Chargers that they should want to win, because if they don't, they play Kansas City at Kansas City after the Eagles in week 15. So if they want to have a tie-breaking hopes there with Kansas City, I would think they would want to split a game at least, and week 1 would be the best time to do that. The Raiders, on the other hand, I don't think it's as important to win, although obviously you want to win every game possible, because in week 13 they have the Raiders again after a bye week, so that gives them a better opportunity to win in the event that they don't in week 2. And then in week 3 they definitely want to try to beat Denver at home, because in week 18 they have Denver at Denver, and that could be a potential rest game in the event that they take care of business beforehand. So if they want to have that rest week where it's not really has playoff implications, they might definitely want to make sure that they win week 3. They're at the Giants in week 4. That's a pretty important game because it's a non-conference common opponent with a division rival. The Chiefs play them as well as the Raiders. So if you're looking at tie-breaking procedures, number 1 is common opponent with division. Number 2 is non-conference opponent with division. Number 3 is actually best win-loss tied percentage in common games. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a non-conference opponent, but in this case it is, and it's a common opponent with other division opponents, so it could potentially be a tie-breaking game. Washington at home, this is another team that has a common opponent with the Chiefs and Raiders, so that's kind of another important game. However, if they take care of business with the other teams, that could be a game that may not matter too much if they have more wins and beat the Chiefs, Raiders, Broncos at least once. That way they don't have tiebreaker over us. They could afford to drop that game. Miami at Miami is another common opponent within the conference. So the Ravens play Miami. Buffalo plays Miami twice. Bengals play Miami. Colts play Miami. Patriots play Miami. Steelers play Miami. So that's definitely a game where you have a lot of common opponents with. So that's probably a game you really want to make sure that you are dialed in for, because it could have a lot of playoff implications down the road with all those teams that are in the AFC conference. So it's probably a pretty important game there. Week 7 we have Indianapolis. That's another common opponent within the division. So the Chiefs play Colts, Raiders play Colts, Broncos play Colts. So that's another really important game, because if teams don't have tiebreaker over you, then it would come down to common opponent within the division, and Colts are one of those teams that you have as being played within the division with all teams in the division. So that could be another important game. Vikings is another important game. Common opponents within the conference. Ravens play Vikings. Bengals play Vikings. Browns play Vikings. Steelers play Vikings. So although Vikings are not a common opponent within the division, there's a lot of common opponents within the conference. And so that could definitely have some seeding implications in the event that goes down to tiebreaker. Obviously, if you win more games than most of the teams in the conference, then you don't have to worry about tiebreaker. So number 1 priority should just be winning as many games as possible. But considering how competitive the league is, you might want to have a strategy to focus on getting 10, 11 wins so you can at least make the playoffs. Then week 9, we're at Tennessee. Tennessee is another common opponent within the division, and that's actually the number 2 criteria in the tiebreaker procedure. So that's a pretty important game as well. They're also within the conference. So yeah, the Chiefs play Titans, Raiders play Titans, Broncos play Titans. Then in week 10, we have Steelers, another conference team that usually makes playoffs. So beating them, it will not only help us get into the playoffs, but it will also help us have a higher seed, especially if the Ravens win that division. Might end up a similar situation this past year where we were able to get the 4th seed instead of the Steelers because they ended up having a lesser record. I think that's how it worked out. And then Jacksonville, week 11 is another important game at Jacksonville, another team within the conference, and also a common opponent with Broncos, Raiders, and Chiefs. So if you break up the schedule, games before the bye week and games after the bye week, I think if we come away with 8 wins before bye week, that means we only need 2 to 3 more games to make the playoffs. Although the teams that we play after the bye week are pretty tough, so you might even want to make sure you have a better record going into bye week. 8 would be good. 9 to 10 would probably be optimal. Obviously going 11-0 in the bye week, that'd be amazing. But I think if we can win 2 out of 3 in the first 3 weeks, that means we'd be 2-1, beat the Giants 3-1. Let's say we drop to the Commanders 3-2, beat Dolphins 4-2, beat Colts 5-2, drop to Vikings 5-3, beat the Titans 6-3, we beat the Jaguars 7-3, and then Steelers would be tough. I say for in this case we beat them, it'd be 8-3. You're looking pretty good going into the games after bye week. Let's say we drop the Steelers though, it means we'd be 7-4, and you'd have to win 3 to 4 games to make the playoffs. I think 3 would be doable. Beat the Raiders, beat one of the teams, Eagles, Chiefs, and Cowboys. We'd probably have to beat one of Eagles and Chiefs, then beat one of Cowboys and Houston, and then beat the Broncos. So that'd make it pretty tough after bye week. So 8 wins should be the absolute minimum, and then everything after that is cherry on top heading into bye week. So once we get to bye week, should give us plenty of time to get rested, get prepared for the Raiders in week 13 at home. Then we have Philly on Monday night. They'll be coming off a game at home with Chicago on Black Friday. They'll have a couple more days to prepare than we will because we play Raiders that Sunday at 1:25 the week prior. Then we play at the Chiefs. The Chiefs will be coming off a game at home versus the Houston at 5:20, so they'll have the advantage of not having to travel for 2 weeks. Then we have to go play the Cowboys at their house at 10 a.m. So I don't think the sun is an issue at that time because they have that big window in their stadium that when the sun is setting, or maybe it will be coming through at that time. Nah, sun should be pretty high in the sky, or maybe it'll be just low enough where it still shines through. So that's something the Chargers probably want to figure out. That will be a potential issue going to the Cowboys in week 16. Then in week 17 we got Texans and Eagles and Cowboys are common opponents within the conference. Broncos play Dallas and Eagles. Chiefs play Dallas. Raiders play Eagles and Giants, or Eagles. So that's probably a more important game because if we're neck and neck with the Broncos or the Raiders trying to make the playoffs, then that game could be a potential tiebreaker to just get in if that is the situation for us. Hopefully that isn't the situation. In that case, it could have seeding implications. Wait, the Chiefs do have Eagles, so never mind. They're playing week 2. So that could be a pretty huge game in terms of tiebreaker and seeding implications. In terms of Cowboys, Broncos play them, Raiders play them, and Chiefs play them. And then Houston is another common opponent within the division. Raiders play them, Chiefs play them, and Broncos play them. And it's also a conference opponent as well. So considering that they've been in the playoffs past couple of years, it's probably another important game there. And then week 18, Denver could be a massive game if we're neck and neck with them, especially to make the playoffs like we were this past year. Or it could also be a game where it doesn't matter at all because we're kind of locked in a seed, as was the case this past year. And it didn't matter. It did matter for them, but it didn't matter for the Chiefs when they played this past year. So the Chiefs got to get rest their starters in that week. Ended up losing, which allowed the Broncos to secure their spot in the playoffs. So Chargers take care of business in the early weeks. That could be a potential rest week for us. But the reality of it is that it will probably have either seeding implications or maybe even making playoff implications for the Chargers. So that was my analysis of this schedule. The other thing I noticed is that we have a lot of 10 a.m. games either away or at home. So we play, which I personally like, the earlier games because I can watch the Chargers and get that out of the way. But I don't think the Chargers necessarily play that well at 10 a.m. I think Chargers play best like around 105 or in primetime games. So we play Giants at 10 a.m. Eastern time, which is actually 1 o'clock Pacific time, but they should definitely treat it like a 10 a.m. game. Then they play Dolphins at 10 a.m., which will actually be another 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. Pacific time game in week 6. Another 10 a.m. game versus the Titans, which I think they're only 2 hours ahead. I'm not sure, so that could be like a 12 p.m. game. Yeah, it's 12:22. Yeah, it would be 12 if it's 10, so they're 2 hours ahead. We play Jaguars in week 11 at 10, at Chiefs at 10, at Cowboys at 10, so 6 games at 10 a.m., so they should be prepared to play a lot of early games this year. Then we have 4 1 o'clock games. We have the Broncos, Commanders, Colts, Raiders, all around 1. Those are all at home, so no time difference there. Play the Raiders week 2, Monday Night Football at 7 p.m. Vikings, Thursday Night Football at 5:15. Steelers at 5:20 and Eagles at 5:15. So 4 5 p.m. games, 3 of them being at home. The other thing that's going to suck kind of bad is that we play the Vikings on Thursday Night Football after playing Sunday versus the Colts in October 19th, and we have the Vikings on October 23rd. They're both home games, however, so that should be nice, but it will be still a short week. Vikings do have the Eagles that Sunday, so it's going to suck even more for them because they have to make a long distance travel to LA to play us.